If you've been involved with the gaming sphere online to any capacity for any length of time, you probably know that fanboys, specifically console fanboys, have a great, awesome, wonderful habit of taking a corporation's word at face value and bragging about the word at face value, and then the word ends up not being true, and then they have to somehow twist the situation into the thing that they were misled about actually being totally fine and better than the alternative, even though we all know that if a different corporation did this exact same thing, you wouldn't be defending it. And we've seen that all over the PS5 generation. I remember when the PS5 was revealed, PlayStation dudes were promised some great things. They were promised like awesome 4K performance, great optimization, 60 FPS, basically across the board, 120 FPS on a bunch of games. And then what you ended up getting was another generation of 30 FPS caps if you wanted to take advantage of the awesome graphics that they were promising. And a lot of times the awesome graphical versions of these games can't even hold that steady 30. I mean, you're fucking lucky to break triple digit frame rates on the PS5, even though that was one of the main selling points. Also, remember when 8K was on the fucking box? That was a fun thing that they did. How many games are you playing at 8K? I just think it's hilarious that the PS5 promised you a whole bunch of things that it did not consistently deliver, and then they released the PS5 Pro, which promises to actually follow through on the original promises of the base PS5, and the PS5 Pro can't even consistently do that. And yet people are still defending this fucking corporation instead of just going to PC and literally getting whatever you want. Joe, PC gaming is just too expensive these days. Yes, console gaming is just such an affordable hobby right now. Sorry, I'll go kill myself. But I mentioned this in a video the other day, that I got myself into a little bit of heat on Twitter. And it all started here. Pio tweeted out, "One thing I appreciate about the PS5 is that this generation, every single game I've played has 60 FPS or higher options. Very, very few games on the PS5 are 30 FPS only. That's a huge W." Couple things here. There should be no games that are 30 FPS only. Like, none. And I understand that to an extent that's a developer issue, but when it becomes commonplace or a repeat problem, then maybe the hardware and the promises made by the hardware weren't all that legitimate. Maybe you should take your business elsewhere. There shouldn't be any games that are 30 FPS only, regardless of who's to blame for that. But also, every game that you've played this generation has 60 FPS or higher options. There's 60 FPS options, meaning 60 FPS is not the default, even though that's what you were sold on this generation. This post is just mental gymnastics to try and do the thing where you're like, okay, well, this generation promised this thing and we didn't get it, but actually it's still a W because like, we got it. We got like 60% of it. So I quote tweeted and I said, "The fact that 30 FPS only is even still a possibility." And I got people yelling at me. So come along with me as we dive into the responses that I got to this tweet, where the majority of people were agreeing with me that it's absurd that it's 2026 and 30 FPS only is still an option for the current generation of console hardware, a console generation that, by the way, is apparently going to go longer than expected, presumably because of RAM shortages and hardware issues in the construction of the new generation. So I don't want to hear shit about how PC gaming is a mess because of the hardware shortages. You guys are stuck with this shit too. I don't know why so many people are acting like hardware shortages just don't affect the console sphere. We are absolutely all in this together. So just batten down the hatches. It's gonna get rough. But I want to go through the responses that I got to this tweet, because even though most of the people were agreeing with me that 30 FPS only is ridiculous, there were also a good number of people getting on my case for taking issue with 30 FPS in the current year. I would like to remind you that 30 FPS is what the Nintendo 64 was running games at, generally speaking. I would also like to remind you that you were getting a pretty consistent 60 FPS on games on the PlayStation 2. But let's just start looking through these, because the hoops that people are jumping through to defend 30 FPS on the PS5 is insane. Let's begin. Alucard's Fate says, "In my day, Gran Turismo and Wipeout 3 ran at 30 FPS and it was damn fine. It was good enough for everyone." Okay, it's not your day anymore. Like, how is this a point? Like, yeah, why are you guys mad about 30 FPS? It was fine 20 years ago. Bitch, that was 20 years ago. Also, no, it wasn't. There was a very clear difference between games that played at 30 and played at 60 20 years ago. 20 years ago was 2006. There was a very clear difference between games that ran at 60 and games that ran at 30. It wasn't as much of a point of conversation in the console sphere, but that was also 2 whole console generations ago. You can say it was fine in your day. That's not a point. It's not your day anymore, and it's not fine anymore. This literally is not a point. It's like if you walked up to someone and just called them the N-word, and people were like, hey, you shouldn't say that. You're like, well, I mean, back in my day, it was fine. Like, this logic doesn't apply to literally any other discussion. Why are you using it here? I don't give a shit what your day was. It's not your day anymore, Grandpa. I love how innovation is great until the corporation starts taking advantage of you, and then all of a sudden, innovation as a concept is unnecessary. What is this? Nathan Robbins says, there's nothing wrong with playing a beautiful game in 30 FPS. Red Dead 2 is just fine. I actually prefer it with cinematic games, which is funny that you bring up Red Dead 2. That's a game that came out in 2018. It came out on the PS4 and the Xbox One. The PS5 still cannot get that thing above 30 FPS. You are still playing Red Dead 2 at 30 FPS on the PS5 Pro, but you just keep telling yourself you prefer it. I prefer it this way, actually. And look, that's fine if you prefer it that way, but if you mosey on back to my original post, I'm not talking about preference. I'm talking about 30 FPS only being here at all. If you prefer to play games at 30 FPS, fine. Why is that the only option in some of these games, though? Why are you paying more money than ever for absolutely outdated benchmarks? And also, I would love to get people like this in a room. All these people who are like, well, actually, I prefer 30 FPS. I would love to get these people in a room, sit them down in front of a monitor, and let them play, Red Dead 2 at 30 FPS and then play Red Dead 2 at 60 FPS. Same exact graphical quality, like same exact game, only difference is 30 FPS to 60 FPS. How many of those people would actually prefer 30 FPS? Because I'm pretty sure it would be like none of you. 60 FPS objectively feels better for a video game. I understand the cinematic argument because, I think we can all agree that 60 FPS movies or TV shows look kind of janky. But in a video game where you are controlling the actions, where what you do with the controller or the mouse and keyboard is shown on screen, you can tell a higher FPS from a lower FPS because you are literally seeing your movements in front of you in the game quicker. I never said 30 FPS shouldn't be an option for those of you who are just made out of eggs and prefer it that way. My post here was specifically about 30 FPS being the only option. That is just a fucking ripoff at this point. What are you paying for? We had 30 FPS only games back on the Xbox 360 and the PS2. What are you paying all that extra money for? Kid Roro quote tweets me with just a crying baby gif. So I criticize 30 FPS only in a very expensive era of tech. And the fact that I criticize that is a point of mockery in itself. Right. Okay, my bad. I won't criticize the corporation. Sorry. I forgot that it's the current year and corporations are all evil. We hate corporations. Capitalism evil. Open markets bad. But also, don't you dare criticize Sony. Don't you dare criticize the corporation I like. Sorry, my bad. I'll just go fuck myself. You keep paying $70 for 30 FPS, by all means. Or when GTA comes out, $80, $90, $100 for 30 FPS. Go for it. You guys have fun. I'll be over here on my pile of money that I haven't spent because I actually have respect for my own hobbies. Alexio says, 30 FPS is great on Death Stranding 2. Great argument, I guess. Wonderful point. I so understand what you're even doing here. Okay, again, okay. If you like 30 FPS on Death Stranding, then sure, have fun. I don't think Death Stranding is a game that is locked to 30 FPS, or at least I wasn't under the impression that it was. But also, why is this relevant? Shake says it's always going to be a possibility. We're nowhere near the actual limits of perceivable fidelity, so it's always going to be a trade-off choice. Which is an interesting point, because this is the kind of thing that you would believe if you didn't pay that much attention, actually. The idea that, like, listen, 30 FPS only, 30 FPS caps, we're really pushing the limit of what's possible, so of course we're gonna have to limit the frame rate somewhere. That's the kind of thing that makes sense and really like you follow, you're like, yeah, that makes sense, bro. This guy gets it. If you don't pay attention to literally anything. Like, have we forgotten games like, I don't know, Battlefront 2? The fucking Last of Us 2 on the PS5? Games like Doom and Doom Eternal, Wolfenstein 2, basically everything Santa Monica Studios makes. It is entirely possible to make games that look fantastic while running well. But if you limit your game to 30 FPS, you are damaging the experience of the gamer because it is a video game. And also, I mean, what I think is happening, and what a lot of people would agree with me is very clearly happening, 30 FPS caps, 60 FPS caps, it's just a crutch for developers so that way they don't have to actually optimize their game. Because if you're spending all this money and all this time on shit that doesn't matter, like people's sweat pores, random reflections, and ray tracing and shoving that shit everywhere it can, it's gonna make the game run like ass. So yeah, just cap it at 30 FPS. Like, oh, our game runs like ass, but I mean, we can get it running at 30 most of the time. Or our game runs like ass, but you know, I know we sold this console and we sold this hardware based on 100 FPS, but I mean, our game runs like shit. We can't get it running consistently above like 70, 80 FPS. I just cap it at 60. And we can't, the game runs at like 40 FPS, and I just cap it at 30. They'll pay for it anyways. And that's how optimization standards just keep getting lower and lower, and that's how Unreal Engine 5 is now just accepted in the industry, even though it runs like complete shit, because people like you have just accepted terrible optimization and outdated benchmarks for more money than you have ever paid for these things. Over and over and over again, you're just fine with it. You make excuses for it, even though this was never a problem before. Even though during the PS4 and the Xbox One generation, that like late 2010s generation before the PS5 and Xbox Series came out, there was some real innovation going on with how good we can get games to look while making them run really well. Like, what happened to that? Why did we just stop doing that? I'll tell you why we stopped doing that. Because you stopped demanding it. Like, you realize that you, as a consumer, have some fucking agency, right? Bill says 30 FPS is a possibility on majority of PCs as well, lol, going off the Steam data for what majority of the poor people playing on PC use. Few things wrong here. First of all, of course 30 FPS is a possibility on PC. PC lets you choose whatever frame rate you want. Of course 30 is a possibility. Like, tell me you know nothing about the PC without telling me. Also, if you want to work off Steam data, there's a lot of people running on the Steam Deck, which is a handheld. If a handheld system is hitting the same frame rates as a PlayStation 5, the PlayStation 5 has some fucking issues. But also, the poor people on PC are playing at 30 FPS. The poor guys are playing at 30 FPS. Okay, sure, low budget PCs are playing at 30 FPS. If that's the case, why are consoles so damn expensive if they are also playing at 30 FPS? Like, even if we take your scenario as canon, that it's just the poor people using 30 FPS, alright, why are consoles so expensive then? If console is fine because poor PCs also do the same thing, why are consoles so expensive? Eat my ass. Next comment. Sailor Goon says, why would you think that 30 FPS in some games wouldn't still be a thing when games continue to push the limits of what is being rendered constantly? Something tells me you're the same type of person who obsesses over hyper-realism. You just not know how computers work, or? What? Okay, rewind. Do I look like the kind of person who obsesses over hyperrealism? I'm not. I'm just someone who's been playing games for more than 5 minutes. I'm just someone who recognizes that we had what you would call hyperrealism during the second half of the previous console generation. We already had that. And then new consoles come out and proceed to do basically nothing to raise the performance standards, the frame rate standards. Which, as a gamer, that's what matters to me, because that's what makes the video game feel better. And this last bit, you just don't know how computers work. Alright, you want to talk about computers? Here's some gameplay from Crysis. The original Crysis came out in the mid-2000s on the PC. This game looks better and runs better than most games on the PS5. That's my whole issue. But thanks for just not reading the thing before you responded to it because you perceived it as criticism of a corporation, and that's where your brain stopped. Kevin Bradley Graham says 30 FPS is perfectly fine in flat games. No, it's not. Next comment. Zay says if they push the limits and make it a good game, then I don't mind 30 FPS. Nobody's pushing the limits. Nobody is doing that anymore. Next comment. Can you tell I'm just getting annoyed at this point? Skull Kid says 30 FPS is perfectly fine if it's correctly optimized. If it's 30 FPS, it is not correctly optimized. End of story. Looks like... Listen, you just cannot tell me with a straight face that there is a good reason why the performance metrics that we had, like when I was a child, I was born in 97 playing games at 30 FPS and some games at 60 FPS. How is it possible that I'm now fucking 28 and that hasn't changed? At least in the console sphere. I switched to PC years ago. You guys can have fun with that shit. I'm breezing right by you on my RGB motorcycle. Vroom vroom, bitch. I haven't played something at 30 FPS in almost a decade. And yet you're over here paying more than ever for those metrics. GTA 6 is gonna come out at 30 FPS, it's gonna sell gangbusters, and every AAA publisher is going to use that as justification to continue releasing games at 30 FPS, and you're gonna keep paying for it. You're gonna keep being fine with it. Because, oh dude, look at the sweat pores. Bro, look at the lighting in this pre-rendered cutscene. It's just so good. Oh my god, bro. That was an in-engine cutscene and it looked that good. I can't wait to sit down and act like I'm participating in this experience. Please charge me more than ever for these things. Gosh, you people are so stupid. I'm sorry. You people are stupid. If you're defending 30 FPS in the current year, you are just STUPID. DINOSA. You are a dinosaur. OLDMAN. You are an old man. Doofus Club time. Game of the Dead people, Nate Grimsey, official dregs, and want to cut someone's face with a sharp rock. Guess who got his motorcycle license? Vroom! The Gamer 127YT, Blast 14, Jimeo Setsuna, Biscuit 1101, Chris Void, West of Rex, Hentai XOA16, Slip, Click, Flicks, and Blu-ray discs, Delta 169. I'm a dinosaur. Baron von Vaderham, Folly Pinkus 97, Unicorn Rocco, Goji Fan 2005, Billa 310 Sharp, AI Slop, that makes Microsoft, Kushka Doug Nixie Smile, Dirty Mac and the Boys, Vast Dennis, stole my 9 dozen eggs, Joe, get him! Max, Look at you Gaming, it's a hard nug life, nice dude, one man savage, no pay up, but help me, I'm losing to a shark in Marvel Rivals, that's good. It's a good thing that you're losing to a shark in Marvel Rivals. Sharks are cool. Vector, Vendetta, Archie, Mechanical Resonance, Sick Nick, Matt Fox 94, Exchange Induction, Bear Brain, Stick Rider, Broken Crayon, Purple Off for the Racking, Jake Spider Monkey 94, hashtag Biggest Dickest, Schmovin Schmells, Schmick, Vast Dennis, Muskie, Big Fudge, Thrashing the Vibe, and Ott, Clipto Penguin, JoJo 6, Molting Really Sword, Oracle, Blast, fucking Blast. Get blasted, Jimmy Chops. Master Killer, Firestorm 2056, Tom Strong, Accent, Unknown 186718. I got my A new 850s, A new 850s, A new 850s, 850s, A new 850s. That's what it says right there. Ed Shadowbearer 1789, Bender Fondue, T-Train Reisner, Non Verlaw, High Partial Main 8, Vox Octo, Card Main 4372, WX, Snake Eyes 327, MK2996, X Model Gamer, Fire has 105. Did you hear that one? Eat. Tech Gaming, just a Slim Jin, Lord Bass the second, Joe laughed at us in the moat, Gay Local Autism, PC Gamer, Jessica Shepard, Ricky Power, BDTT, Tabby, Xylophone, Doofus, Words Academy, Green the Sail Angel, Microsoft, Slop Pilot, made me sit on Spock's fork, this fuck. God damn it. Cyrus 6701, Jackson 940, Joe, I got the Steam Deck back in the other day. Creed Warrior 23, Max Chess, and Chat, oh, Step Joe, you dirty, naughty boy, you, Creed Warrior, fuck, what am I reading? Creed Warrior, can you take me higher? Knight of Sapphire, Mind of Cypher, Knight of Cypher. Wow. ML04, oh my god. Wolf of Midnight, EKW. I'm 6 feet from the edge and I'm thinking. Steve Wynn Studios, Film Kraken, Own Gaming Treat, Brown Thorns, Game, Mag, Neck, Severin, Evans, Spartan 3s, Callie for Waxmere, Pow Pow, Johnny Weston, Gob Gonson, Rogue Winter 919, Zach Thane, Kenny, oh my god. Hangman 4 higher. Hangman 4 higher. Eldon the Noble, Frost Crystal Pie, Genesis, Mega Geese, Covers Go, Ghost Toe, Redeciding, Represent, Honest 94, Blue Hook, and when in doubt, face the wind and wank it out. Mr. Techno Squeak, Jody Peters, Smitty, Wiggy Van Jensen, Diego Garcia, begins, I American, Eddie Harmon says Legend, Ono Justin, Randbury, Tuna Win, Extreme Wolf 7, Retro, Westa, JMMSG, Veg, Griffin, Curtain Now, Spike, Saul Haven, there's a spork in my butt, Woody, comma Doofus, there's a spork in my butt. Sometimes I do stuff like this, and then I wonder if my neighbor can hear me. Like, did my neighbor just like wake up? Did I wake them up? And then the first thing they hear when they start their day is, there's a spork in my butt. And then I'm going to walk outside and just be like, hey, John, how you doing? And he'll be like, hey, guy, how's your butt? Okay, toodles.